I've learned really to say no to things that I can't and lean into things where I feel like I can.
Do you want a wealthy retirement without worrying about money? Welcome to Retire in Texas, where you will discover how to enjoy your faith, your family, and your freedom in the state of Texas. And now, here's your host, financial advisor, author, and all-around good Texan, Daryl Lyons.
Hey, this is Daryl Lyons, CEO and co-founder of Pax Financial Group. Thanks for tuning in today. You're listening to Retire in Texas. And as always, I have to give you our legal disclosure that this information is general in nature only. It's not intended to provide specific tax or legal advice. Visit paxfinancialgroup.com for more information. And I always want to remind you, when you text Texas to the number 74868, we have 9 financial advisors. One of them will reach out when you send that text. They'll give you a 15-minute consultation. They have a heart of a teacher. And so if you have any questions, that's one way to engage with us. But just visit our website for all those disclosures and you'll be good. Okay. So excited about the show today. Tom Cuthbert. I appreciate it. How do you say that in French?
Cuthbert in French. Sounds very fancy, but just Cuthbert in English.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being here. And so what's cool about Tom is I know about Tom and your work with Vistage and coaching. So I want to get a little bit into that later.
Sure.
I know people that know you and respect you, but I don't know your story. So we're going to get into that a little bit today. Is that cool?
Absolutely.
And I was telling Tom beforehand that it's always my preference for those that have been listening a while, for me not to know a lot of the story, because the audience has given me feedback that they can kind of hear my sincere curiosity of learning about somebody. And so that's the way I prefer to do it. And it's not rooted in anything that's lazy or anything. It's sincere. Like, I just really want to know people. And frankly, I always am amazed at people's unique life stories, right? Like, everyone has this unique life story. And so one of our values as a company is respect. And we're very much a faith-based culture, but we put that respect in there because we want to respect everyone's unique life stories.
That's great.
So I look forward to learning more about you, Tom. Tom, where are you from originally?
Richardson, Texas, which used to be, when I grew up, a little tiny suburb of Dallas. Now it's it's its own big city, and I think it's more a suburb of Plano today than it is anything else.
So you grew up there?
Yeah, I grew up there. My mom and dad lived in Iowa for a short time before that. Dad was a engineer in the tech space way back in the 60s. So about 4 months before I was born, they moved to Dallas. And fortunately, I was born in Texas and get to claim that.
Did you grow up a Cowboys fan?
You know, I grew up a massive Cowboys fan to the point that my mom used to work part-time at a preschool. And she taught Roger Staubach's kids.
Yeah,
and
wow.
Staubach, way before your time, Daryl.
I get it.
But I tell you what, the guy was an icon, and he was just one of the nicest people. And I had the chance to meet him as a kid. And it's just one of those life moments, like I shook the hand of Roger Staubach. So major Cowboy fan for life.
Yeah, he's a lot of people don't know this. I actually collect sports cards.
Oh, wow.
And so having a Roger Staubach rookie is one of my favorites.
Oh, that's a big one.
And I always think about the story of where I get cards. But Roger Staubach, the other thing I like about Roger Staubach is he's a really good business guy too.
He is. Yeah, brilliant.
I was up at LBJ getting some ice or something at the convenience store, and out comes Roger Staubach. And I was so kind of taken aback that I didn't even know what to say as Roger Staubach, but that's pretty cool. So was your dad, he was in the tech business?
Yeah, Dad worked for Collins Radio back in the day. It's now Collins Aerospace, and was absorbed by Rockwell.
Yeah.
But it's actually an important part of my life that people ask about a lot. Is the work I do today, as you alluded to, and maybe we get to that, is really built around the one word curiosity. And I'm very curious about people, very curious about things, very curious about life. That came from my dad. And my dad, as I was a kid growing up, I would see him every morning, get up at the same time, eat the same breakfast, leave at the same time, home at the same time, watch the same news channel. I mean, everything was the same. White shirt, black tie.
No kidding.
A nerd before nerd was even a word, right? Like he was on the beginning of that movement. And so it wasn't until July 20th, 1969, when I realized just how cool my dad was and how curiosity would be something that stuck with me for my life. And it was that day, as you may know, is when they landed Apollo 11 on the moon.
Yes.
And the work my dad did at Collins was in what's called broadband impedance matching. Don't ask me what that means, but the practical application of that is when they sent Apollo 8 to the moon, for the first time, 250,000 miles away, Apollo 8 was going to go behind the body of the moon and then have to reconnect the signal back to Earth. And I learned later there was, relatively high chance that that was not going to work. So Dad and a whole team of people did that. And on the day they landed Apollo 11 on the moon, he was at NASA as a team with, they have to be there during those landings. And the technology worked flawlessly. And I was just like everybody else on the planet, blown away by that. And that and my dad really set me on a course of curiosity. So I owe a lot of that to him.
That's a cool story. I've had some rocket scientists as clients and got a chance to hang out with some of them, and that their minds are just wired differently. The engineering, but it's nearly an altruistic thing because you work your tail off, and I mean, it's just you can work for years and years and years and years and never receive any glory, accolades, and then something like this, and you just breathe and go, it's all worth it.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I realized just the significance of the work that he did. And then, from that point through his life, he continued to do that. He passed away a few years ago at 91, had a great life, very accomplished Navy pilot, flew blimps, on and off aircraft carrier stuff. I mean, just a great guy, a great dad, and wonderful influence for me. But that one word, curiosity, is what I think I would attribute the most to him.
What did your mom do?
Mom was she kind of was a teacher, was a stay-home mom, and Mom grew up, and my dad liked to tell the story this way. My mom didn't like it. You'll get it when I share it. But, Dad would compare himself to Einstein. And so he would say, well, Einstein would always make these comments that people would come to him and they would say, Dr. Einstein, what if you married Marilyn Monroe? Your children would be both beautiful and have your intellect. And he said, but what if the opposite were true? And Dad always laughed at that and thought it was funny. My mom was Marilyn Monroe. She was glamorous, beautiful, charming, wonderful, just a very kind person. And it's interesting too, because like I said, I learned the curiosity and really gained that attribute from my dad.
Yeah.
From my mom, I really learned to care about people and be curious about human beings and not as much the technology aspect of it, but the relationship part.
Yeah, that's great. Now, did you have siblings?
I have one sister who's older than me and grew up a hippie. So, I was born in 1959. And so she is 7 years older than me, 6 or 7. And so I got to see her grow up through the hippie years and remember when she was a young teenager announcing to my dad that she was going to go in a VW van to New York to go to Woodstock. And I think she was 14. And it's just one of those other life. So I remember let's just leave it at that didn't go well. But she's great. So
that's middle class, would you say, your family income profile?
Absolutely. I would say we were very middle class. Dad and Mom were always conscious of what we had and didn't have. But, as a kid, I always had everything I needed.
Right.
And life was good. And, I was taught a lot about money early on, which has been a blessing.
What did they teach you about money? Was there anything in particular that you remember?
Yeah, two things really jump out at me in particular. One was I had an allowance, and we had friends that maybe had a little more, a little less than us, but the allowance was always earned. It was never just here's $1 or $10 or whatever. There were always tasks associated with it. My dad, being a person of routine, would make sure that the boxes are checked, and I would do this. And so the first stage of life that I learned about money was being a young person and going to work early. My first job was at Polar Bear Ashburn's ice cream parlor. I was a super duper dipper. And, it's quite the, I actually got promoted, Daryl. You'll be impressed with this. My first promotion was to a senior super duper dipper.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, it was a big move up for me. I was 16 and loved working at the ice cream shop, but had to pay for a lot of my own stuff. And Mom and Dad were divorced when I was in my early teens, and so that creates some complexity and a little more independence for me. But those lessons of responsibility, kind of part one as a young person, was that, like, earn things, you work, you make money. That's the connection.
It's funny you say that because I did some studies on this and trying to understand, is allowance better, is commissions better? And our family is really of the approach the same as yours, get the job done. That's how you get paid. So there isn't like a monthly stipend that our kids get. But one of the key elements was that of all those studies was whatever approach you take, just having little conversations on a regular basis about money was really healthy. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we would talk about that. That was a consistent thing for us.
Yeah, that's good.
The other part of life, and this may be interesting to you too, that really made an impact for me financially is when I turned 18 and went off to college. And, Dad said, here's some money. I'll get you set up and good luck.
Is that right?
Yeah. And you know what? I look back, it was great because it taught me, and man, if you have a list of dumb decisions financially, you can check the box for me for every single one of them, particularly early in life, right? And I think many of us are that way. But the lessons that taught me early, making those mistakes when, the risk was smaller than it would be as you get a family and all those type things was really impactful to me.
So can you share one of those dumb mistakes?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start.
I know.
I think that
I have them too. So.
The biggest dumb mistake was a red 1977 Triumph convertible. Still to this day, one of the best, most fun cars I've ever owned. Absolutely could not afford it. Fell in love with it. And during college, and I ended up dropping out of college, partly because, as my dad would say, I ran out of money and grades at the same time. But never went back, wish I would have. But part of that was just adding financial burden on myself when I had that responsibility, and then having to go work to make that money. And that takes time away from studies. And so a big distraction. That was a very difficult time of life. But that investment I made, that spending on that car, was not smart.
But you enjoyed the car.
I loved it. I would buy another one in a heartbeat.
I know. It's kind of one of those things. Yeah, I got to get another one of those. Got to go back.
Right.
So you did end up dropping out of college, which is actually cool because a lot of people that listen to the podcast, they tell me, yeah, that guy, they were successful because they went to college. And actually, a lot of the people enjoy the conversations of people who didn't finish college.
Yeah.
What did you do after dropping out of college? And where was it? Was it in Texas?
It was in Lubbock at Texas Tech.
Texas Tech. Okay. Yeah. So after that, what'd you do?
So I got a job, and I got a job making the most money that I could find. And it happened to be an assistant manager at a pizza restaurant. And two things happened at this time. One is, I had planned to major in education and coach or do something like that. And I've always had a love for that. But I realized after literally a few weeks of working in the restaurant with a little bit of authority, learning how to be a manager, that it was a gift I had. Like, I love people. I love to think about, the numbers part of it and hitting our numbers for the day and all those things that come with early stages. The restaurant business was a great proving ground for me. You learn all aspects of business in a kind of a microcosm of one location. And so I fell in love with leading and management, and that was a gift to me. The second thing I learned that was, if I was not going to get a college degree, I was at a huge disadvantage, and I knew that I needed to learn. And a friend of mine gave me a book, almost as a joke, I think, Everything I Learned at MBA School. And it was this collection of little stories from MBAs about what they learn. I'm like, okay, I'm going to read this book. I'm going to have an MBA. Not exactly.
Sure, yeah.
But it was...
I know that book, by the way.
It's a great little book.
Yeah.
But that began a lifetime of reading. And the other thing somebody told me was read the Wall Street Journal. So literally for 40 years, I've read thousands of books. Literally, I average 25 to 30 a year pretty easily.
Yeah.
And I've read the Wall Street Journal every day. And that learning has helped me get, a life MBA, if you will.
No, for sure. The Wall Street Journal, do you read the audio version or the mobile version?
I don't. I'm one of the guys that likes the paper because I can read it at the gym when I'm doing something.
I get it. What I used to do in college is I was such a nerd with the Wall Street Journal. If I didn't have time, I don't know why I did this. If I didn't have time to read it, I'd cut out the articles that I liked and saved them. But the Wall Street Journal is absolutely... It is an MBA. And then, of course, reading books. And I think that really is, I think a good lesson for anybody listening is that if you find yourself not in a good position for college, for whatever the circumstances, there's other ways to get educated.
Absolutely right. Yeah. That's a great point.
So what was the career like for you when you finally kind of found yourself?
Yeah, it was funny because I began to kind of work my way up in the restaurant business and went from that location, got married, moved to Houston, got a recognition, was with Pizza Hut at this time, and got a recognition as a regional manager of the year, and thought, oh man, this is, I'm really cool. And I went on to another company called Pizza Inn. It just really 13-year career, the last 9 of it at Pizza Inn. And it ended up in bankruptcy. The company was in bankruptcy.
I remember Pizza Inn.
Yes. It was actually, it turned out to be a great experience. And Another one of those life moments I remember clearly was when the company was in bankruptcy. I had an opportunity to leave and go to another restaurant company. And I called my dad and I said, hey, Dad, I got this opportunity. I'm going to do this. And he said, well, if you stayed, which situation would you learn more from? And I went, oh, man, that's a really good question. And the answer was staying and learning how to turn a company around out of bankruptcy.
Oh, yeah.
So I was fortunate to get to work with a new CEO that came in, reported directly for him for a couple years, and really enjoyed learning from that. A lot of work, but we were able to pull, tons of us pulled the company out of bankruptcy and back in the right direction. I went on to a couple other restaurant ventures and eventually woke up one day in 1999 after selling a restaurant group and thought, yeah, this has been a fun ride, but capital intensive, highly competitive, low margins. Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And then reflecting back on growing up with a dad in technology and realized that's much cooler and probably a lot more profitable than the restaurant business.
And so then you got out.
I did. We'd sold out and I just decided it was kind of those entrepreneurial sabbaticals, if you will,
Sure.
where I thought, what's next?
Yeah.
And found a great partner here in San Antonio that took a chance on me, and we started a little company, and that kind of led the next half of my working career was in technology.
So yeah, there's kind of 3 careers, right? Or is there more than that?
Yeah, I would say there's 3 if you're counting what I'm doing now. Yeah.
The restaurant,
sure.
we'll get into what you're doing now. The restaurant, you didn't retire, you pivoted into technology. Now, give me some color on what that was more specifically.
Yeah, we started a small company here in San Antonio that in 2000 tracked online advertising activity and website activity.
Yeah.
And back in the day, that was early. And so we were working with companies like Yahoo and insurance providers and, really learning about how the internet worked over a few years. In that, we found a specific problem in 2005 called click fraud as online advertising was growing. And so my partners and I pivoted and started a new company called Click Forensics that went on to be called Odometry that helped identify invalid click activity. So advertisers get what they pay for.
Yeah.
That company grew and raised and spent a bunch of venture capital, and it was a great ride as well. Eventually acquired by Google. And so that gave me the moment in life where back to the entrepreneurial sabbatical, what's part 3?
So all of this, you're getting accolades in the restaurant business and you're growing. Did you ever doubt yourself along the way? Was there ever times where you're like, gosh, can I even do this?
Yeah, every day. And I think there's a balance between healthy and unhealthy fear in business. The healthy part of fear in business is you always have people shooting arrows at you, right? Mm-hmm. So competitors, yourself, your team, there's lots of things, a lot of moving parts, as you well know, that can go wrong in a business. And so that fear was healthy. There also was the unhealthy fear that I had. I'm 5'6". I wrestled as my sport because I was too small for the real sports, as my mom would say, football or basketball.
Yeah.
And so there's some fear or some doubt in that. Being a college dropout is certainly another one of those. So absolutely, I've dealt with that all the way through career.
And you powered through it.
Yeah, I think it's just feeling that God's gifted me in certain ways and recognizing those gifts. One of the lenses that I look through to make decisions is this something that I can be excellent at or at least very good at?
Yeah.
And I've learned really to say no to things that I can't and lean into things where I feel like I can.
So then you pivot going into the 3rd chapter of your life. Doubt will be the final chapter.
Yeah.
Is what?
So Vistage contacted me, Vistage International Organization, primarily CEOs that they work with. But they were looking for former CEOs to be Vistage chairs or CEO coaches. And I had not heard of them. A good friend of mine here in San Antonio was part of it in Austin, actually, before it was in San Antonio. And he would drive back and forth every month for his meetings, and he would meet with his coach. And he said 2 things. One, it's a great organization. And secondly, I think you'd be good at it. Like that was all the encouragement I needed to look at it.
Yeah.
I always appreciated my friend and his comment. And so I leaned in. I went to San Diego for a week and got locked in a room, if you will, with 26 former CEOs from all around the world. China, South America, and most were from the U.S. Every industry you can imagine, football helmet manufacturer to technology company, and just a great group of people. And I fell in love with the concept of helping others. And that's really how I think about the work I do today.
So you spend time coaching CEOs.
Yeah, today the practice has grown. I have 6 groups, 120 members across those groups. 2 CEO groups are kind of the anchor groups where I spend the majority of the time. And so, I added it up. I spend over 1,000 hours a year in private, closed-door conversations with CEOs.
Yeah, that's life changer because the impact that they have on a number of people, I mean, it's significant. So what do you... Gosh, there's so much to ask you. I'll have a couple more questions and I won't, but I got to ask you, what are you seeing right now as maybe the biggest concern or challenge that CEOs are facing?
There's a couple things that jump to mind. The first, obviously, is the economy, pending recession, inflation, interest rates. I mean, all of that is one huge headwind that we're all facing together. And we've certainly faced a lot of headwinds in the last few years with COVID and other things. That's number one. Number 2 is people, another very obvious one. The third, maybe not so obvious. But the people headwind is the way that people, their expectations seem to have changed some through COVID.
Yeah.
Working remotely, maybe some sense of entitlement. And I am really big on it. It's not a generational thing. I think every generation has great attributes and downfalls. And so it's less that to me and more just about maybe a mindset that people might have as we course correct.
That's fair. Yeah.
The third one, and this aligns with your question to me, is because of the ups and downs that we've had in the economy, a lot of opportunities in M&A, for example, coming up in the next year or so, a lot of headwinds and extremely difficult decisions to make during COVID. CEOs are doubting themselves more today than when I first became a CEO coach. At least that's my perspective.
Wow, that's amazing. And I could see that. I can absolutely see that. It's like the rules of the textbooks have no longer valid in a lot of ways. So if I could summarize, and there's just still a lot to this, coming from a middle class family, becoming an ice cream guy, becoming a pizza guy, before that dropping out of college, now you're advising tens of thousands of people through CEOs and giving them life and hope and doing amazing, I'm sure, tactical things along the way too. So it's pretty amazing to see this, looking at it from that point of view. And then a couple more questions and then I'll close this out. What else? So outside of, you can do coaching forever, right?
Sure.
So as long as you got your marbles, but in terms of family or lifestyle, entertainment, activities, is there anything that you enjoy doing?
Yeah, I'll give you 2 things. One, somewhat important business related, the other, the important one.
Yeah.
The business related one is a few years ago, I bought a Sandler training franchise here in San Antonio.
Yeah.
My partner and a team of people have turned that around and it's growing like crazy. We've built a company called Sales City Group that now owns multiple Sandler training franchises around the country. And we're growing to 15 locations.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm kind of doing that as I guess it's a business hobby. It's an overstatement.
I get it though.
I love it. I love the people that we have. I love our concept. They're doing great work. And it's just a way for me to have an outlet to grow something.
Yeah.
The big draw for me at this point in life is, number one, to guard my time. And so I do. I track exactly the number of hours I work per year. I'm very guarded when I'm off. Generally take Fridays off, for example, and just invest in taking that time and investing it back into family. I have 3 of the most awesome grandkids you would ever want to meet. They are so much fun. 6, 4, and not even a year yet. She's just about 8 months. And so that's really where I want to invest more time. And my wife, Jill, and I have between us 5 kids and couple still heading off to college here in the next few years.
Yeah.
So we love spending time together, love spending time with family, love traveling when it makes sense for us. But that really is the focus for me for the kind of the last third of life, if you will.
That's very interesting. Very cool. The interesting part, I have to say, is it reminds me of Jocko Willink.
Yes.
He says discipline equals freedom. And the idea that you're disciplined with recording your time gives you that freedom to do the things that you want to do.
100%.
Yeah. Last question, most important question. What's your favorite salsa?
Oh my gosh. I saw this on your list of potential questions and I thought about that. You know, I'm not a picky eater I'll say I'm a picky eater. There's certain things I'm not eating a black olive. There's just no way I'm eating a black olive.
Yeah.
But when it comes to stuff like salsa, like, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know a brand. I know what I like, and I guess HEB, is that the right answer?
Fair enough. You cannot go wrong with HEB because you cover everything.
That's right. I'll take HEB as my answer then, Daryl.
Love it. Well, thanks for hanging out with us.
You bet. Enjoyed it very much.
I think everyone will really enjoy this podcast, so I look forward to airing it. And for those that have stayed with us to the end of the show, thank you. You're listening to Retire in Texas. And I want to remind everyone to visit paxfinancialgroup.com. And again, you can text 74868. Put in there Texas, and we'll have an advisor reach out with the heart of a teacher and just have a chat with you. And I want to remind you, in the midst of all the chaos, to think long term. Have a great day.
This is the podcastfactory.com.